This is the Active Church. To God be the glory.
I just quickly want to tell you about the names of the places. The first thing that I want to mention in that passage was the name Gog. Now, Gog is the leader of a place called Magog, all right, which is like the kingdom of Gog. And just to put some of the places just very briefly into context, you've got Magog over here. Now, Magog, that today is Russia, all right. You've got Turkey over here, which is Tubal. Now, Meshech, some people say it's there in Turkey, others say it's here in Russia. That some people talk about Moscow. They're not sure where Meshech is. Gomer, there's a lot of scholars who say that that's Europe. There are some people who say that Gomer is over here. Put is Libya, all right? So Libya, Put, same place. And Cush is modern-day Ethiopia. And then this Dedan over here, and Sheba. This is Saudi Arabia. And Persia is modern-day Iran. And what Iran's pushing for is a united Persia, which is modern-day Iran and Iraq over there. So I just wanted to briefly give you just an indication of what all those places mean. But those places are real names, you know, for real thing. But the most important one is Magog. So the Russians, you know, will be involved in this whole thing. If you can just take it back to that last slide, and we can get going again. Thanks, Tasha. All right, so when you look at the whole situation, the question is, how do things look today? Well, obviously, as you know, Israel exists. At the end of the day, the bottom line is, if you don't know that Israel exists, then you know, you need to watch the news a bit more. But their position is a precarious one. All right, there is a lot of danger for Israel. If you look at Israel, you know, to their west, they've got the Mediterranean Sea. But if you go and you look to the north, to the south, to the southeast, the east, and the northeast, you know, all over, there are enemies of Israel. In fact, if you look to the south of Israel, you've got Egypt, you've got Libya, you've got the whole of North Africa, in fact, you've got Sudan. They're saying that even Ethiopia will turn. And then to the southeast, you've got Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, which is the key point of Islam. To the east, you've got Jordan. To the northeast, you've got Syria. And to the north, you've got Lebanon. And even in Lebanon, Israel has a lot of enemies there. And Ezekiel talks about the nations that Israel will have very bad relationships with. And Ezekiel speaks about the fact that Israel, at this time, will have many, many enemies. Now, if you look at the situation today in terms of Israel, I once heard Brian Houston talking about a time when they had a function with Benjamin Netanyahu, who today is the Prime Minister of Israel. And Benjamin Netanyahu made a comment where he said that the evangelical church, okay, evangelical Christians, that's us. That's basically, you know, if they talk about the evangelicals and they talk about how bad they are, they're talking about you. You understand what I'm saying? The evangelical church is not one of Israel's few friends. The evangelical church is Israel's only friend. Right? Even America, when America supports Israel, it's only because of evangelical Christians. And Israel's biggest enemies, right? Israel's hated by a lot of people, but their biggest enemies of all are the Muslim nations. Now, obviously, if you look at this prophecy, and you can see it today, because all of those nations around Israel, many of them in the prophecy spoken of in Ezekiel, many of those nations outright speak about the fact that they want Israel destroyed. And I just want us to have a look at the current situation in the Middle East, because one of the things is for sure, if the Muslims could, they would attack and destroy Israel. That is a fact. The first thing that I want us to talk about, however, in terms of looking at this situation, is Arab dynamics. You know, the Arab peoples. So you've got many of those nations, the Egyptians, you've got the Saudi Arabians, you've got many of those people who are actually Arabs. And then you've got also the old Persian nations, which is Iran and Iraq and all that sort of stuff. I just want to give you a bit of an understanding of actually what's going on there. The Arab world is divided into many nations, but they have a common religion, and their religion is Islam. The founder of Islam was Muhammad. But Islam has a problem today because the founder, they call him the Prophet Muhammad, he died suddenly after a short illness. Some people say that he was actually poisoned to death. That I haven't been able to verify. That is one of the things. But even in Islamic literature, they speak about the fact that Muhammad died after a short illness. And he left no successor. In fact, Muslims themselves, when their scholars start speak about the fact that Muhammad left no successor. And so that left, after he died, it left the battle for succession. Now, what Muslims believe, all Muslims believe, is that when Muhammad was here, he'd set up this kingdom around Mecca and Medina, there in Saudi Arabia, and he'd actually set up heaven on earth. And that while Muhammad was there and he was giving the prophecies and that area actually became heaven on earth. And obviously this got messed up when the battle for succession happened. Now, if you look at today, there are many divisions within Islam. Okay, sometimes people think that the Muslims are united. Believe me, they're not united. They are 10 times, maybe even 100 times more divided than Christians are. I can promise you that right now. You don't see Christians killing each other to the level that it happened there. You've had 1 or 2 wars. So, for example, you had it in Ireland. You've had some skirmishes in Scotland. You've had issues between Protestants and Catholics, between the Catholics and the Orthodox churches. You know, you get Christians saying, no, those other Christians are going to go down. You get stuff like that happening, but you don't see them blowing each other up, suicide bombings, pastors standing up and say, if you go and you die in killing some of those infidels, those people over there, you know, those Catholics or those Orthodox or whatever, it's not part of your group. You don't get pastors saying that if you go and kill those people, you're going to go to heaven for that. You have this in Islam. And but if you take all of the divisions, there's 2 broad streams that I want to talk about that you can actually sort of summarize this whole thing over. And it all came from the battle of succession that took place after the death of Muhammad. On the one side, you had those who believed that Muhammad's companions were supposed to vote for a capable man to take over from Muhammad. Right? What happened was that in the culture there, the Arab culture before Muhammad came, that was how they would select the leader. Okay, the elders of the town would get together and they'd vote for a leader. And that would become the leader until that leader died. And so this group believed that is how the succession with Muhammad should have been worked out. And they have a belief that there are no special believers. That every single Muslim is the same. And there's a name for these Muslims. They are called Sunni Muslims. S-U-N-I, Sunni Muslims. The man in charge became known as the Caliph. The Caliph of the Empire of Islam. And he ruled over an Islamic empire which was called the Caliphate. And the first Caliph was a man by the name of Abu Bakr. And he and his other companions, obviously who'd walked and talked with Muhammad, they wrote what is called the Hadith. And the Hadith is the traditions about Muhammad's life and about his spiritual practices. And obviously what Muslims do is they try and replicate his life and they try and replicate his spiritual practices. On the other side of the divide, you've got another group of Muslims who believe that the leadership of Islam had to stay in Muhammad's family or be directly appointed by God. Their belief is that the Imam, now in Islam the Imam is like the pastor or the priest or whatever. And their belief is that the Imam in Islam is sinless and that his authority is infallible because it comes directly from God. They also believe that the leadership of Islam had to stay in the Prophet's family or had to be appointed directly by God. What happens is that they actually venerate, which means that they worship and they pray to the saints. Okay, now the saints are the Imams that have died. And so what you find is with this group of Muslims is that they will undertake pilgrimages to tombs of some of these Imams that have died in the hope that they will intercede for them before God. You know, so that's sort of like the split in Christianity, you know. If you look at Catholicism versus Protestantism and all that sort of stuff, the Catholics believe that you go and you pray to the saints and you go and you pray to Mary to give you a connection to Jesus, whereas the Protestants say, no, you know, you go to Jesus to get to God. You understand what I'm saying? So they have a similar split in Islam. Now, these Muslims are called Shia Muslims, and they believe that Muhammad's cousin and brother-in-law was supposed to have taken over from Muhammad when Muhammad died. And his name was Ali bin Abu Talib. Now, their traditions, the Shia Muslims' traditions, their hadith comes from this man. And they reject the hadith of the Sunni Muslims. And that's why there's such a big divide between them, because the Quran gives you certain information, but there's a whole lot of missing things about how to live your life. And so that's why they will fight each other and they will see each other as being corrupt and being evil. As a result of this, Middle East Muslims are divided. There's certain things that they all do, like the pilgrimage to Mecca and stuff like that, but they are seriously divided. And when you look at the violence that takes place in the Middle East between them, what often happens is that it is happening along the Sunni Shia divide. Now, if you go and you look at the Islamic population worldwide, 85% of the Islamic population are Sunni Muslims. And about 15% of them are Shia Muslims. If you can just bring up the next slide. Now, this is a current map. That other map was an earlier one. This is a current map of the Middle East. And if you can look at, these are, these are the nations, and there, you see there Israel. You see how small it is, okay, over there. Now, I just want to tell you about these nations, because some of them are ruled by Sunni Muslims, and some of them are ruled by Shia Muslims. Now, we'll start over here. If you look at the Muslims who are in North Africa, Egypt, Sudan, Chad, Libya, all of those countries, they are all ruled by Sunni Muslims. All right? If you come across here to Saudi Arabia has got a majority Sunni population, and they're ruled by Sunnis. If you look at Jordan over here, they're ruled by Sunnis as well. If you come down here to Yemen, all right? Yemen are actually ruled by by Shia Muslims, but they've got a Sunni majority. So they've got problems there. If you've heard of issues going on in Yemen, that's actually what's going on. Then you've got Oman. They're ruled by a sect of Muslims called the Ibadi. They sort of keep themselves away. So there's not too much violence going on there. And then over here you've got the United Arab Emirates. Now, maybe you've never heard of the United Arab Emirates, but I'm sure you've heard of Dubai. Okay, Dubai is the big city in the United Arab Emirates. They also are ruled by the Sunnis. And then over here you've got Qatar. They're also ruled by the Sunnis. And then you've got Bahrain over there. Now, Bahrain, you might remember Bahrain, they've just had a Grand Prix recently, a Formula One Grand Prix. The Grand Prix nearly got stopped because of the protests and stuff that is going on there. And the reason why there's protests going on there, because Sunnis rule Bahrain, but the Shia are in the majority in terms of the population. There are more Shias than Sunnis in Bahrain. And then you come further up. If you go and you look on the Persian Gulf coast of Saudi Arabia, this is where most of their oil comes from. And the majority of the population in this section of Saudi Arabia is Shia. Although overall the majority of the population is Sunni. And Mecca and Medina sit somewhere over here on the western side. And then you come up here to Kuwait, and again you've got Sunnis ruling over Shias. And then you move across the Persian Gulf. Now we move to Iran. Okay, Iran and Iraq were the old Persia. Now Iran is about 85% Shia Muslim. All right, they had that big revolution that took place in the late 1970s. They've got the Ayatollah, and when the Ayatollah dies, what happens is they do a funeral, and they actually try and pull body parts off of him, because they believe that they can get close to that dude, that he's going to intercede with them to God, the Shia Muslims. Then you've got Iraq. Now under Hussein, not Hussein, what's his name? the old one that was kicked out. Saddam Hussein. It is Saddam Hussein. He was a Sunni Muslim. When he got overthrown by the Americans, what has happened now, because about 65 to 75% of the Iraqi population is Shia, the Shias are now ruling there. They've got minority Sunni populations. They've also got what they call Kurds, and they've got Christians as well, although the Christians are being very badly persecuted there. Then you've got Jordan over here. Jordan is ruled by the Sunnis, and they've got a Sunni population. And then you've got Syria. Now, you know, Syria, they're talking about this oppressive regime, and they're likening the regime there to Gaddafi and all that. But what's actually going on there is that there's actually a sect, okay, called the Alawati sect. And they form about 12% of the Syrian population. And the rulers of Syria come from the Alawatis. About 75% of the Syrian population is Sunni. And so there's an uprising that is taking place. But unlike with Gaddafi, who didn't have any support amongst the people, except amongst his own tribe, the Shias and also the Alawati especially are fighting for their lives, because they believe if that the Sunnis take over, they're finished. And then you've got Turkey, which is ruled by the Sunnis as well. So that's just basically a broad picture of what's going on there. And what I want you to realize is that there's a tremendous amount of division there. Okay, people often think that the Muslims are united. They're not. They're fighting far worse than what the Christians are. Believe me, to the point that they're killing one another. Now, if you look at the Arab Spring, Everyone talks about the Arab Spring as being this democracy movement. What has happened was that in North Africa, it was about Sunni Muslims overthrowing a Sunni dictator. But in the Persian Gulf, it's often about Shia majorities trying to overthrow Sunni dynasties, but the Sunnis are actually a minority. In Syria, you've got a Sunni majority who's trying to overthrow a Shia sect. Okay, and then last weekend, by the way, just interestingly enough, in the north of Lebanon, they've also got a city called Tripoli, just like Libya. Fighting broke out between the fighters of those who support the government, who are from that Shia sect, and those who are Sunni. Okay, and the fighting actually broke out then. I'm watching because it carried on quite a bit through the week. So I'm watching to see if things are going to start happening in Lebanon because of, as a spillover from what's going on in Syria. Now, in Syria, what has happened as well is that the recent suicide bombings, because there have been a whole lot of suicide bombings that have taken place recently, indicate that terrorists have started getting involved in this uprising. At first it was people saying they want democracy, but now a group like Al-Qaeda, which are Sunni Muslims, are getting involved there. And the other problem is that Iran backs the Syrian government against the people that are rising up. In the Gulf states, Iran is also backing the protesters. Iran and Saudi Arabia and Egypt are mortal enemies. Saudi Arabia and Egypt now on the same side with the Brotherhood taking over there, and they are mortal enemies with Iran. If you look at Lebanon, Lebanon is the one country that is unique amongst the Arab world, because Lebanon has a lot of Christians in it. About 40% of the Lebanese population is Christian. And so what happened is that they had a massive civil war there, and eventually a power-sharing deal was brokered, whereby the president of Lebanon has to be a Christian, the prime minister has to be a Sunni Muslim, and the speaker of parliament has to be a Shia Muslim. Now also in Lebanon, you've got that terrorist group called Hezbollah. Hezbollah fall under the Shia sect, and the Shia is the biggest population. They form about 45% of the population in Lebanon. Now, over and above these issues, you've got all of these dynamics going on. The next thing you've also got is that you've got outside support happening. You've got other people, because of oil and Israel and all sorts of things, that are sticking their fingers in the pie. If you look at the Americans, for example, they support the Sunni governments. They've got a big pact with Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia is the biggest oil producer in the world. The strange thing is that the Americans talk about the Saudis as being their friends, but the Saudis want America destroyed. Okay, it's a very stupid thing when you make friends with someone that wants to destroy you. The Russians, on the other hand, support the Shia governments. So Iran and all of these sorts of things. There's too much division right now for them to attack Israel. They're fighting each other. I mean, Syria is in a situation where they're headed to a civil war right now. I mean, they used to really cause problems for Israel, but they're not right now because they're fighting themselves. And what I want you to realize is that division is preventing them from fighting Israel at this point. But another thing has also taken place is that America elected a President Barack Obama, and under Obama, US support for Israel has dropped. I mean, he says he's on Israel's side, but it's not really if you listen between the lines. So right now, today, I don't expect that war to happen because they're too divided. But what about the future situation? You see, something could happen, an event could take place that could unite the Arabs against Israel. And there's three things that all of these nations hate together. And there's three things that unite them more than anything else. And the three things that the Arabs and the Persian nations of the Middle East hate, number one, they're all united in their hatred of Israel. They all want Israel destroyed. The president of Iran, who's busy fighting with the Ayatollah, the main leader there in Iran, he said Israel must be wiped off the map. The Muslim Brotherhood, who hate the Iranians because they're Shia and the Muslim Brotherhood are Sunnis, they also hate Israel. And they had a cleric recently who stood up and said that they are going to overrun Israel, and one day they're going to form this Islamic caliphate. They're going to go back to the good old days of Muhammad, and Jerusalem's going to be their capital. He actually said that in the last 2 weeks. The second thing that they're united in is their hatred for Christians. Right? They're in the Middle East, they hate Christians with all of their hearts. And the third thing, because of their hatred of those two, and because they see this as being the power behind them, they hate America. And that's why you always see them burning the flags. Okay, it's got nothing to do with oppression and all that. It's got to do with what they believe. Now, one day, however, they will unite in an attempt to destroy Israel. It is something that has happened before, and it's going to happen again. They will unite to attack Israel, and Turkey, countries like Turkey and Russia will be involved with them. They will also have the backing of other nations in Asia Minor. Not only that, the Chinese may back them as well. And then what happens is that there'll be a situation where the Europeans will be unwilling to help. And the Americans will leave Israel in the lurch, and Israel will be on their own. And so you'll have this massive army with hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of soldiers descending on Israel. Such a small country. All right, and now I'd like us, if we can just bring up the next map. I want you to get a picture of just how small Israel is. All right, Israel is a tiny place. You know, they talk about the fact that the Palestinians must get their independence, and they must get the West Bank, which is over here, and the Gaza Strip, which is over there. If you take from this point of the West Bank to there, to that coast, is exactly 9 miles. That's about 14, 15 k's. Now let me just give you a picture of that. If you go from the beach in Durban and you go 14, 15 k's east, inland, you're still in Durban. All right? That's how big that strip of land is over there. Now the other thing that has happened is that the Palestinians over here and over there, Hamas rules here and Fatah rules here. And they rule parts of here, and Israel still controls parts of the West Bank. But Hamas over here and Hezbollah over here, they launch things that are called Katyusha rockets into Israel. They stand there in a town, they launch a rocket, and they try and hit an Israeli town and kill innocent people. Okay? Between the time when the Israelis pulled out of the Gaza Strip, which was around the year 2000, and the year 2006 when a big war started with Hezbollah, and then later on they went into the Gaza Strip, over 6,000 rockets were launched from the Gaza Strip alone into Israel. The other problem is over here, that the world's pushing Israel to give up this whole West Bank and to give up East Jerusalem. But from these towns over here, they can actually hit Tel Aviv. Now, Tel Aviv used to be the capital of Israel. Today, it's the financial capital. It's still, although the capital's moved to Jerusalem, Tel Aviv is still the financial capital of Israel. And they will be able to hit Tel Aviv with Katyusha rockets if they control this land over here. And people can't say it won't happen, because the moment Israel pulled out of here, in a deal that they thought would give them peace, these guys started firing rockets at them. So imagine now, you look at that country, it's small. I mean, if you get that picture that's only 9 miles wide there, that slit over there, then you begin to realize just how small this country is. Imagine all those nations descending on Israel to attack them. Imagine planes flying in to drop bombs. Imagine missiles flying in from other countries carrying nuclear warheads. Imagine Hezbollah missiles flying in from the south of Lebanon. Imagine Hamas flying missiles in from the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Imagine troops moving in from Jordan and Saudi Arabia. And all of them are coming to attack and destroy this tiny little country. Israel will stand no chance. They will have absolutely no chance until God steps in. And then what the Bible says, and this is what Vicky just read, in Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, that a whole lot of things, weird things will happen. One of the things is that the invaders will start attacking each other. They'll start killing each other. Another thing is that there'll be a massive earthquake, and they won't be able to fight because they'll be shaking. Another thing that will happen is that rain and hail will pelt down on them, and then fire and sulfur will rain down on them. Planes will fall out of the sky. And these armies will be totally and utterly devastated completely. In fact, some scholars believe that this is going to create a set of conditions that will allow the Antichrist to step into a power vacuum that will be created with so many soldiers and so many armies having been destroyed. The armies will be so devastated that, as Vicky said, Israel will have fuel for 7 years from those armies. Not only that, and I want you to just imagine this, it's going to take them 7 years to clean up the bodies. 7 months, sorry, to clean up the bodies. Now what I want you to realize, in days gone by, there weren't enough people in the world for this many soldiers to die in this world. But today we've got over 7 billion people in the world. The Chinese themselves have got something like 200 million soldiers. This is possible today. Then Ezekiel 39 ends with the fact that everyone will know that God really exists and that He really is on the side of Israel. I want to just conclude this morning with Romans chapter 4 verse 11, which says this: "It is written, as surely as I live," and God is sure that He lives. How many of you realize that God is sure that He's alive? Okay? "As surely as I live, says the Lord, every knee will bow before me, every tongue will confess to God." Right? What I want you to realize is that you can end up in a position where you will kneel before God. Maybe like those armies who are going to be forced to when they get wiped out after attacking Israel. There's going to be a further battle later on where Satan and the Antichrist are going to come up against Jesus. And we'll be talking about the battle of Armageddon later on. But either you're gonna kneel before God because you're forced to, or you're going to kneel before Him because you choose to. He actually asks you to kneel before Him so that He can make you His friend. He wants to make you His friend.
You breathed your word, and all the stars were born. You breathed life into my soul. For you're my King, you hold everything. You're so awesome, you are God. You're my Father, you're my friend, you're my Redeemer, you forever reign. You're my Father, you're my friend, you're my Redeemer, you forever reign. You take a heart of stone, replace it with a heart of flesh. I'm yours. You make all things new. Your love breaks through. My heart's renewed again. You're my Father, you're my friend, you're my Redeemer, you forever reign. You're my Father, you're my friend, you're my Redeemer, you forever reign. God is powerful and He is just. He is faithful, His righteousness. He is glorious, a triumphant King. Jesus is love, He is hope, He has risen. God is powerful and He is just.